Gary Young's thirst for knowledge is alive in Young Living today. There's a scientific and environmental reason for everything we do, and we are always trying to learn more. We love every chance we get to dive deep into the science behind our oils and products. So let's learn together about why it's worth it to go to the lengths we do in bringing the best kind of products into your home. Hello and welcome to Young Living's podcast, The Wild Drop. My name is Jacob Young, your host. Young Living is a world leader in producing and distributing premium essential oils. And this podcast will provide you with drops of information about Young Living, including stories, history, product information, lots of little fun facts, and even more. Mark Bartlett is our Executive Vice President of Science and Product Development here at Young Living. Welcome to the studio, Dr. Bartlett.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. Well, you have quite an interesting story as far as how you actually came into the world of Young Living, and I thought it'd be kind of fun for you to share how you ended up joining our Young Living family.
Yeah, I don't even know where to start. Of course, I haven't always even lived in America, right? So I think my journey kind of started in Australia as a kid in the outback, squashing ants and marveling at how nasty they smell and smelling the sheep in the wool shed, the wool fat, the lanolin, the wildlife and the flora and fauna in Australia are really interesting. And it's hard to not be fascinated with science as a kid in Australia, Poisonous insects, how does that work? Why is there a spider there that's got a toxin that existed before Homo sapiens did? What is it about the gum leaves that make them smell so amazing, the eucalyptus smell, and how can koalas eat that when it's full of terpenes, then came over to started studying science, came over to the US, worked for the National Cancer Institute, was always interested in plants as the foundation of all of the drugs that they create, right? So always was looking at what are the active principles in plants. Then that, of course, took me away from the National Cancer Institute and sort of doing the academic science into this industry, where I've been for 30 years, and really in the context of beauty and wellness. So it's a really fascinating industry, and I think it's much maligned, right? A lot of, you'll have regulatory authorities, whatever, saying, oh my gosh, it's a wild west. Like, why don't people just stick to drugs and mainstream medicine? Mm-hmm. And yet there is a huge amount of science in this space, whether it's personal care or wellness, in nutrition, in supplements, in botanicals. It's really amazing how much science is invested in this. People don't realize.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. One of the things that you shared with me when you first joined on was, once again, your story, how you left the cancer world because all the drugs that you had used had some type of background going all the way back relating to something that originated from a plant as one of the ingredients that was part of that drug. And so I found that super fascinating. That's what intrigued you so much to want to join the industry as well. And so what ingredients were you seeing specifically in some of these pharmaceutical drugs that were being used for cancer that are related to a plant that we know?
I do have some specific examples, but it's kind of chemistry and it gets a little boring. But I guess the big principle is that, when it really comes down to it, the foundation of all of the drugs, it's not just, some doctor sort of drawing a molecule in his head and going, well, this one might work.
Yeah.
What actually is that you have hints from nature, always hints from nature. For example, I'll give a really simple example that everyone can relate to. In the old days, there was this thought, and maybe there still is today, but generally in that world, a couple hundred years ago, the thought was, if you wanted to help with a disease or a condition, then you would go to a plant that would sort of be related to that. So, for example, rheumatoid arthritis or rheumatism or sciatica or lumbago, these kind of rheumatoid type conditions, they'd say, well, they certainly are associated with cold and damp. Mm-hmm. So why don't we go to a plant that loves the cold and the damp? And so they went to the willow tree.
Yeah.
And they took the bark of the willow tree and made a tea from that, and it's full of salicylates, right? So it actually worked. And then, of course, the modern approach, which is classic and we all know, is like the the chemists got a hold of that and said, well, what is it in this compound? And they found, the salicylates, and the Germans said, well, what happens if we put an acetyl group or a methyl group? And they play with it. And they did find that if they acetylate the salicylic acid, that they came up with aspirin. It's acetyl salicylic acid. So aspirin is like the classic anti-inflammatory, right?
Yeah.
But it came from nature.
Yeah.
And it's the same with nearly all of the other bioactives in the drug world. And so at that point, when you're looking at cancer, when you're looking at, which is what I was doing, and I was also kind of a specialist in autoimmune disease, we're looking at these drugs and testing them out. And I'm thinking to myself, well, okay, so we're going to wait till we're sick, and then we're going to apply this very potent drug. And as the potency goes up, usually either the addictiveness or the side effects go up as well, right? What if we just found what nature has to offer in the raw form and eat more of that before you get sick, right? And so that's really what led me to leave that industry, because I thought, man, I want the rubber to hit the road much faster. And again, my first surprise was how much work they'd already been doing in this natural products industry. So there are vitamins, there are minerals, that's what everyone thinks about, and then there are these phytochemicals. So, back, 30 years ago when I started, we didn't really know what the actives were in broccoli, for example. So we'd have a broccoli powder. Now we know that there's all these amazing molecules like indole-3-carbinol, some of these sulforaphanes, the sulfur-based molecules. We know what the actives are now, and so we can actually make extracts and standardize them, and that's, a good company will do that.
That is fascinating to hear, that everything is derived from nature. And I think that's such a testament to how people used to live long time ago. When we were down in Peru, we visited with some of the local shaman there, and they showed us some of the local plants and just a lot of the biodiversity that they had down there and what they use it for specifically. Right. Most of it was to help combat against bites, poisonous bites.
Imagine.
For snakes and spiders and ants. And there's actually a snail down there that's huge. It's like 3 feet long, and the slime on it is venomous as well.
Oh, yeah.
And so they had a plant for that as well. They had a plant for pretty much everything. It was amazing. There was one that I'd have to go back and look at through my videos that I was recording, but it had such an interesting name, and the way that they actually make it work for respiratory congestion is they inhale it kind of like a cigarette, and then they blow it on you. And that helps with respiratory congestion.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's really, really amazing and interesting. And the people that are down there, they're really old. Like the shaman are in their 80s and 90s, and you'd never know. You would absolutely never know, just because of the way that they live their life, the plants that they use. It is fascinating. It's absolutely amazing.
That is so interesting, isn't it? And, human beings are just so creative. From whatever culture, from whatever part of the world, we've got so much to learn about what nature provides and how it helps humans. And I don't know if people realize that, the Chinese, of course, have been doing that for centuries. They have their own, and they've been very systematic in the way that they've recorded this stuff. So they have the Chinese materia medica, right, which has led to all the traditional Chinese medicine. Yeah. In India, they've got Ayurvedic medicine, right, where they've sort of done a similar thing, but from Eastern sort of Indian medicine.
So talking about, health and wellness, obviously you've been in this industry for 30 years and you just recently joined Young Living. What kind of made you want to join Young Living is the main question I have. Yeah,
I do have a love of challenges and black boxes, right? If there's a black box, I want to open it. And it's interesting that, I mentioned before that the supplement industry is much maligned, and it's, of course there's shysters out there, but there's some really good work going on.
Yeah.
And so actually about 20-something years ago, my wife worked for Young Living. And I always thought, well, good for you. It's kind of they're just a bunch of tree huggers, right? Like, what's this essential oil stuff all about? And so I was kind of realized that I was being a little bit the same way, like a little bit, is elitist the right word? I'm like, why am I discounting that? So later I became interested, and actually some very heartbreaking trauma happened in our own family. I had, this is getting a little personal, but I have a 17-year-old son who died by suicide just a year and a half ago. And it just changed my perspective completely in that, like, okay, I need to maybe it just was an impetus to change my life a little bit.
Yeah.
But then to realize there's more to life than just health and wellness. And I was really digging into anti-aging and, diet, lifestyle, botanicals. And then I started to think more along spiritual and emotional lines. And to me, that's kind of a realm that Young Living is digging into with its essential oils. Like, sure, there's a botanical aspect to it, but there's also this very spiritual aspect to it. Because we know, and as I dug into it more, that aromas actually hit the olfactory bulb, and these are really basically exposed nerves at the base of the nose, right? They're exposed nerves in the air. They're picking up these aromas and sending those signals straight to the amygdala, which is a very primitive part of the brain, and impacting memories and emotions and spirit. And to me, that part of life, it's 95% of life, isn't it? It's your relationships, love, your memories, your motivations. And I started to think, what is Young Living doing there? And so this really sort of set me on this new path. And I'm so glad I'm here because I have been amazed at what I've seen.
We're so happy to have you. You're such a quirky person, and I just absolutely love your personality. So we love having you on board. And the fact that you love to attack challenges head on is definitely such a Gary mentality, a mentality that my dad had. He loved just challenging himself every single day with something new, something exciting. And so I'm so glad you've kind of found like a playground area for you to kind of mess around in and see what all we have to offer for you. So as far as supplements go, is there a difference that you've seen maybe with Young Living apart from other companies in this industry when it comes to supplements? You kind of shared your story on oils and how we're not just tree huggers, but there's actually something more to essential oils than what meets the eye.
Yeah. There's a few things in that question that you asked, supplements and then oils, right? So let me go to oils first and then talk a little bit about supplements. So, and you mentioned your dad, and really joining this company is really an exercise in sort of unpacking your dad's brain as well, right? He was an amazing pioneer, and you've got good historians in this company. So when I find an oil or a blend or even a supplement, I will talk to your historians, John Wetton or Karen Boren, and get original transcripts and thoughts from your dad, and it really is quite amazing. Your dad was ahead of his time in so many ways, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So the oils was one thing, supplements the other. When it comes to the oils, I guess the first question I would ask is like, are they effective or is it just woo-woo? And the more I dig, the more I find, no, they're effective. And, I already mentioned olfactory bulb. And, for me, it's like, okay, it's a challenge. How can we explore this further? And so we are working. There's some amazing technology now that allows us to identify. We've identified all of the receptors of the olfactory bulb. There are 389 that we know of.
Wow.
And it's this combination of those olfactory bulb receptors that gives us the picture of what it is that we're smelling. Is it pleasant? Is it unpleasant? Is it lemon or is it cherry or something else? And we can also learn how that impacts, you can do studies to show the impact on emotions, whether it makes you sleepy or whether it makes you more alert or more adventurous, which is amazing to me because, that's what a lot of our oils are named after, right, is the impact. So that's some of the science that we're starting to dig into now, which I find, just amazing. Does lavender really help you to relax? Seems like, yes, it does. And we're starting to find some really good research that shows that. One area, I've always been interested in metabolism, human metabolism. Now, some people think they limit their thinking there. They think, good high metabolism means I'm losing weight. Yeah. Low metabolism means I'm getting fat, right? It's actually much more than that. Metabolism is all of the biochemical reactions in the human body that keep you alive, right? So you've got catabolic reactions, things that are breaking down the foods that we're eating and creating energy from them. Anabolic, so you're creating, the collagen in the body, all sorts of things. Today, we're realizing that people's metabolism is kind of getting out of whack. There's a reason for all of that. And anyway, I've been digging into that for the last 10 years or so and making products and realizing what natural products do. What fascinated me was one of the first studies I looked at when I came here was, they did a study on 60 women that showed that when they are smelling particular aromas from essential oils, that it is changing all sorts of metabolic parameters. I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? Like, this is having a far-reaching effect that we didn't even realize. And this brings me into the question of, well, are the oils that we have at Young Living superior to the oils that are on the open market? So really one of the first things that hit me when I came here is like, wow, incredible team of chemists here. And the equipment is state-of-the-art. I mean, not just gas chromatography, mass spectrometry, but, liquid chromatography as well, but also these real state-of-the-art sort of techniques that they're using. Is this all just for show, or are they really using it? And they're really using it. And one thing, for example, is that you can synthesize a lot of these aromatic molecules, right? The perfume industry does that.
Yep.
Is that different to smelling natural products? So let's look at lavender. And you guys are the experts in this, but so I'm sort of sharing you my journey into sort of an insight there. So I find the lavender from Young Living very full-bodied, and not all of the notes are completely pleasant to me, but it's a very deep, kind of a very heavy aroma that's very rich. And I'm used to kind of the synthetic ones that are, it's all the pleasant notes, and there's nothing that I don't like. But it feels very kind of, it feels nice, but it doesn't feel as full-bodied.
Yeah.
The chemistry now can tell us whether or not there's synthetic molecules. The first thing that you look at is, in a synthetic one, they're just going to have 2 or 3 molecules, right? Because they're the ones that smell good, so maybe they are complementary. In the Young Living lavender, it's completely full-bodied. There are 300 or 400 molecules that make up that aroma. And not all of them smell like lavender. Some of them smell kind of earthy, right? But these are the natural molecules. When you try to synthesize molecules, the other thing is, so that's the big difference, right? The Young Living lavender is going to be complete. It's going to be 300 or 400 small molecules. They make the body of this aroma. Synthetic will have 2 or 3 or 5. I don't know. The other thing is stereochemistry. Are Young Living distributors familiar with that concept?
I haven't heard of this concept. I'm sure maybe there's one or two out there that are familiar with it.
Okay, so invite the listeners to look at their hands right now. Hold your hands up in front of your face, and you've got a left hand and a right hand. And you might ask yourself, well, are these identical? Some people might say, yeah, they're identical. But they're not. They're mirror images of each other, right?
Yeah.
You can superimpose them on each other.
Right, okay.
So they're mirror images. And in chemistry, molecules are like that. They have what's called chiral centers. So this is stereochemistry. If you try to synthesize the lavender aroma, then you can't actually direct the stereochemistry. So you'll get left and right hand. But nature provides usually only one. And that's the one that you can smell and that interacts with the receptors of the body, maybe the way that God intended it to. Vitamin E is another example. If you try to synthesize it, you get D and L, right?
Okay.
It may have antioxidant effects, but it doesn't bind the lock is wrong. It's like having a mirror image of your key. It's not going to unlock the house.
Yeah.
So we're just starting to learn what that really means in terms of our health, and all of those things that I mentioned. That's what the difference is with natural. And that's why the chemists at Young Living go to so much trouble that they can actually, we've got equipment that can actually tell left hand from right hand, which, again, is, you might think that's trivial, but it's huge. Imagine you're climbing a rock with your right hand, because your left hand can't work, right? And there's a wind blowing. And so you're sort of falling off the rock, but then you're grabbing on again with your right hand. Now, let's imagine that your left hand is just as strong as your right hand, but now you don't have a right hand. You're climbing that rock and the wind is blowing, right? So essentially you think, okay, the left hand is the same as the right hand. In chemistry, same thing. You've got a left-hand molecule, a right-hand molecule. Yeah. The chromatography has a liquid phase or a mobile phase and a stationary phase. So when these molecules are going through the gas chromatogram, it's a 20-meter long column, and how long that hand interacts with the glass column versus the mobile phase that's trying to push it off, right? You would think that the left and the right hand are exactly identical, but actually they can tell the difference. And in fact, your nose can smell the difference.
Yeah.
There are, some isomers in nature that are exactly the same, but they're mirror images, and they smell completely different to your nose. So the chemistry that they're doing at Young Living is amazing. It's state of the art. It's proving the quality of the product. Most of our oils, or a lot of our oils, come from the farms at Young Living.
Yeah.
And that's why, because Young Living wants to control the process from seed to seal.
But
we do deal with vendors, right? They're trusted vendors. They're vetted. Our scientists go there. Our farms people go there, and they make sure that they're making the oils from the plants that we want, making the oils the way that Gary wanted them to be made. And yet still there are differences.
Yeah.
And we still have to verify and validate, right?
It's a very lengthy process. It's a very long process, and not an easy process that you can just check boxes off or anything like that.
Yeah.
I just met with Chris Packer, and he was actually visiting a Palo Santo farm down there, and went through the whole process. Their distillation and everything was up to our standards, but the one thing that didn't pass was soil. Unfortunately, the soil had been sprayed pretty heavily with pesticides and stuff, and so we weren't able to work with them. But they almost were able to pass on everything, but as soon as it came to the soil test, couldn't pass them on that.
This is another thing that blows me away with Young Living, right? People are talking about organic, but that really scratches the surface. When you're talking about pure, real regenerative farming, where you are not using pesticides, you're not even using fertilizers because you are concerned with the biome of the soil, not only the microbes, but the living creatures there, the worms, everything else. That's not an easy thing to do.
No.
Right? And
it's very costly too.
And I came in and I thought, how does Young Living even make a profit? They're so fussy. I mean, things would be so much easier if you could just use a fertilizer or an insecticide here and there. But Young Living has this commitment. And I learned very quickly that Young Living customers are the fussiest on the planet, and they actually drive my R&D team crazy.
It's for good reason, though.
Right? Yeah, it is. Ultimately, it's for good reason. But when you're working in this industry, right, you want to produce a product that really works, it's effective, it's being a force for good in the world, but also price sensitivity is always going to be there.
Yes.
So our customers are like, we want this product, we want it to be all natural, but you're telling us we have to pay this much? And this is not just our oils, but our supplement products and our personal care products. So, we really do, we're not perfect yet. There's still some things that we need to sort of move away from, but we are really pushing the boundaries of possibility.
Yeah.
If there are ingredients in our products that you don't quite like yet, it's really simply because we haven't been able to find a replacement yet.
Just because
that makes
we're
it
as
work.
fussy as you guys are with our ingredient choice.
Yep.
Yeah, there's always a few people that are like, why are your products so pricey, right? Why are they priced the way they are? And I said, well, you really need to come down to the farm and experience a seed to seal experience for yourself. And that's kind of why we offer the harvest, but also so our community can be part of the process of changing the world a drop at a time. And it's amazing how many people say, I will never complain about the price again after they've gone and experienced a harvest for themselves, whether it's like Melissa or lavender or our black spruce, or at our Highland Flats farm with all of our conifer trees that are there. So it's a long process. We don't cut corners, and we make sure that you all are able to have the best product possible. And I think it's fascinating because year over year, we end up finding newer ingredients that could be possible replacements that actually make a product better than what it can be. And so that's another fun thing to look at, but also another lengthy process because we have to really do our due diligence and our work on these ingredients to make sure that they're up to par and up to our standards. Make sure they pass the fussy test.
Yep.
Yeah. So
yeah.
It's amazing everything that we do. And I'm so happy that you're able to share it kind of from your outside perspective and how blown away and fascinated you are with everything that we do and just how fussy we are, and that not everything is profit driven, but it's purpose driven.
Yep.
I think that's the biggest testament to everything that we do here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of counterculture, isn't it, from the world? The world's doing it a certain way. Everything's sort of becoming mass-produced, and but we are changing the world, not only one drop of oil at a time, but sort of one piece of land at a time
Yeah.
throughout the world, right? We're showing others how it can be done.
I really like that. So because you're really invested kind of in the supplement area, is there a supplement here at Young Living or supplements here that you've kind of taken to that you've really enjoyed so far that you've really taken an interest to, or?
Well, I'm old school in a certain way, and that is that all of the research is showing us that the average American, probably the average citizen of the world, isn't getting all of the basic micronutrients that we need.
Yeah.
Right. So, for me, Master Formula is the basic formula that everyone needs. Just to give you an example, they do these studies every 10 years or so, USDA and these other organizations. And they go, isn't that interesting? Like we've established what the minimum requirement is, say for zinc.
Yeah.
And about 75% of us, men and women, don't get the minimum requirement of zinc every day. Well, why does that matter? Interestingly, most people have forgotten their biochemistry. Even the doctors have forgotten their basic biochemistry.
I don't even know my biochemistry.
Okay, so what are the micronutrients for? They're actually cofactors for the enzymes. So enzymes, I talked about metabolism.
Yeah.
All of these biochemical reactions that go to make Jacob young, to sort of create him and maintain him, right? So to keep you young, to keep you healthy, all of these biochemical reactions have to happen. You're making ATP, you're sort of, you're digesting proteins and sugars, and you're building collagen and connective tissue. You're keeping your eyesight working, your brains, your muscle, your movement, your thinking. All of that requires chemical reactions, and they're all catalyzed by enzymes, which are gene products, right? Each gene produces a gene product. Mm-hmm. This enzyme is a protein, and it's folded a certain way, and it's like a little, like a lock. A molecule comes along, it's like a key. So the enzyme's job is either break that, turn it into another molecule, whatever it is. What people don't realize is that most of these proteins, these enzyme proteins, are born without teeth. Basically, the active site needs a cofactor. Yeah. So things like zinc or the B vitamins or vitamin C, those are all cofactors. Without them, the enzymes don't work. The chemical reactions don't proceed. So then the body has to make a choice. Okay, he doesn't have enough B vitamin. So where am I going to send that B vitamin? Which enzymes are the lucky ones today? What will happen is if you are marginally deficient in B vitamins, then your body says, well, you still need to move, Jacob. You still need to think. So it's going to go into the processes, those enzymes that create energy so that you can move and think. What's the other job? What are we missing out on then? Well, there are DNA repair enzymes that also need vitamin B or the B vitamins as cofactors. So what's going to happen? Well, you'll move around, you'll think, you'll be able to catch your food, you'll be able to eat, you'll be able to procreate, but your DNA will suffer irreparable damage. It's not being repaired.
Yeah.
So if you want the best of both worlds, if you want to have, good longevity, like these people that you talked about in Peru or in Ecuador, or the Amazon, right? If you want to be healthy and look good all the days of your life, you need to make sure that you're not marginally deficient. So back to zinc, let's make sure you get enough. To me, Master Formula is the insurance policy to make sure that you get all of those. But the next thing where your dad had amazing foresight was the gut. And there's a ton of gut products, right? We've got ICP Daily. We've got all these enzyme products. Your dad was really ahead of his time because this is the latest thing. We understand that there's this symbiosis between these friendly bacteria in the GI and even on the skin and your entire body's health. And even if it's unhealthy, it can be a disruptor of metabolism. So even if you have the foundation of all of the micronutrients that you need, all the enzymes are working, if you've got inflammation or things that are happening because you don't have a gut intestinal barrier function that's like perfect, and that's related to the microbiome, then it will disrupt those things. So I do love the gut products that are here at Young Living as well. And it's my job to tinker with these things. So don't be surprised if I'm going to say, well, hey, there's some new technology. We need to sort of reformulate a little bit. But your father had the foundation ahead of his time.
I think we have so many amazing products with such a strong foundation that I think it'd be best to reformulate these products over time with newer ingredients and newer technology that we find over years to just enhance them.
Absolutely.
They're already so good. There's no need to come up with reinventing the wheel when we can add to that wheel, give it better tread so it's got better traction and whatnot. And I think you have been able to kind of find something there, or are starting to find something there as well.
I'm not anxious to change it, and I realize that I'm up with something here. Like, I haven't been here that long, and so our wonderful customers and brand partners don't trust me yet, but they trusted Gary, right?
Yeah.
And there maybe but Gary was an innovator. He was always changing and improving and finding new science and innovating. Yes. Right? And that's what we need to do. We need to carry on that vision of Gary's, but it needs to be based on sound science. And I realize that our brand partners are going to have to sort of put a little bit of trust in me, but we're going to, Gary was kind of a force of nature. No one person can replace Gary that way, but we have a team of scientists here, and we work in council with each other. Yeah. So it's not just one man, one guy with a white coat on the bottle of the products, right? It's a team. We look at the science and we figure out, what would Gary have done? Let's move this forward.
With how fussy we are and how fussy our brand partners are, is the effort to make our products worth it to you from a personal perspective?
Absolutely, I think it is. I mean, you might at first think, well, okay, we're 90% of the way there, so what difference does that last 10% make, right? And that last 10% can be really time-consuming and expensive. But actually, I don't look at it that way. We're not at 90% really, as long as there's so much knowledge yet to uncover and so much of a path still to walk, right? So we want to be a force for good. We want people to have not only have the best products, but we also want to share that with you. So I would say we want the best products. We want the science to be able to prove it, both in terms of the quality and the efficacy. And then the other thing is the education.
Yes.
So we ask a lot of our brand partners. You can't just sort of sit back. These guys are on the front line. They're sharing the vision with us. Just a quick example, like, again, I told you that I left the National Cancer Institute to work in this industry. I remember my dad years ago coming to me saying, hey, g'day, son. My doctor's just told me my cholesterol's really high. He talks like that because he's a fair dinkum Aussie, right? And so what am I supposed to do, son? And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess there's a lot of people thinking like that. Like their doctor tells them something, they don't really know what to do. And I said, Dad, I've been working on this research for the last 10 or 20 years. At this time, I was working on platelet aggregation and I was doing studies on vitamin E. And what we showed in those studies is it's not just the cholesterol level per se that is the problem. It's if that cholesterol is oxidized. So the real story is, Dad, are you eating lots of fruits and vegetables with all of these antioxidants and vitamin E, these lipid-soluble antioxidants? Because if that cholesterol is not oxidized, then it's not atherogenic. It's not as big a problem. So the real question is, do you need to lower your cholesterol or do you need to prevent it from being oxidized? Sure. And at that point, it was a paradigm shift for me, realizing, wait a minute, the knowledge is there. Who has access to it? This is kind of like the medieval times when people couldn't read Latin, so they couldn't read the Bible. And really, all of these papers, all of this science is in this language that most people don't understand, and it's not accessible.
It's so hard to read,
right?
It's so hard.
Yeah.
When I was working in research and development, and we were working on some of the papers, the way that you have to write these papers is not something that anybody can just understand.
Right.
You really have to. It's almost like reading Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to read it 4 or 5 different ways to finally understand what it's actually saying.
Exactly.
It's so tricky.
And even the headlines are distorting the truth.
Yeah.
So I really feel like it's our mission also at Young Living to share the science, to explain it so that our brand partners understand it. But it's also a commitment on our brand partners. That is, just don't ever stand still. Keep learning. And, we're going to try and be that education arm for you as well. So, yeah, it's worth it. We want the best products, we want the best quality, and we want to be able to educate our consumers as to why.
Yes. Then thank you so much for sharing that as far as just continuing to want to know more. I feel like, once again, that's how my dad was. He wanted to know. And he was always reading and always studying and always just learning anything that he possibly could. And I think that's just a great way to live life, honestly. It makes it really intriguing, it makes it really fun. And I love the way that you think about life. Everything is always like a question, well, why does it do this and why does it do that? And it causes you to want to just commit your life to that. And you always talk about, well, for this part of my life and that part of my life, I was studying this and studying that. And I absolutely love that. I think it's fantastic. And this podcast is why I love doing this so much, because each podcast episode is kind of like going back to class almost. I'm learning something that I almost forgot, or learning something new, and I get to apply it to my everyday life as well. So thank you so much for sharing everything that you had. I've loved this episode of just geeking out and going back to science. You made science really fun again. So,
Thanks. Yeah,
and
it is.
It's been fantastic once again. I feel like I'm back in 11th grade going through biology and chemistry, and I really enjoyed those classes. I really did.
Good, thanks. Well, I hope you have me back. We can do some more geeking out.
Oh, yes. We'll definitely have to do some more geeking out. So, but thank you much for your time, for your knowledge, for your passion and your drive and everything that you're doing. And I really appreciate that you're wanting to keep the foundation and the legacy that my dad's created for all of our products here, but also find a way to improve them as well, and also be an innovator in everything that we do. So thank you so much, Mark. Really, really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks, Jacob.
And thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Wild Drop. Remember, you can listen on iTunes, Spotify, on YouTube, and of course, our website at www.youngliving.com. Don't forget to oil up Young Living family. This is Jacob Young, dropping out. Take care.